"Daisy," whispered Dave, his voice shaking with emotion. "Don't scream." Daisy bit her lip and stifled a scream, instead murmuring, "Saved, saved. If human aid can save you, we'll make it happen," Dave replied earnestly, holding her close. "Come," commanded Albert, the infamous crow killer. "No time to lose." An Indian war cry echoed through the air, causing Dave to jump and Daisy to cling tighter to him. Footsteps echoed outside the lodge. "Shall we make a run for it?" Dave asked. "Might as well," Albert replied. Another war cry sounded, this time met with several others in response. "The white vulture!" Albert exclaimed in surprise. "That's impossible," Dave replied. "He couldn't have escaped his restraints. We need to escape now." "Right," Albert agreed, lifting the skin covering the door. But another series of war cries, this time coming from the north, gave him pause. "What's wrong?" Dave asked, a hint of panic in his voice. "The path between us and the thicket is overrun with redskins," Albert said grimly. "Do you think they found the white vulture?" Dave feared. Albert hung his head, despondent. "I don't know," he replied, his voice heavy with worry. Daisy, her arms wrapped tightly around her lover, cried out in desperation, "Oh, Dave, will they separate us? I would rather die than lose you." "Hope for the best, Daisy," Dave said, his voice trembling with emotion. Looking up at the guide with her big, beautiful, trusting blue eyes, Daisy asked, "Do you think we can escape?" Sadness filled Dave's voice as he responded, "I don't know. Only heaven knows. We'll do everything we can. But if the Native Americans have found us, I'm afraid there may be no escape." Beyond the door of the lodge, the crow killer listened anxiously as the war whoops died down and silence fell over the camp. "Well, Albert?" Dave asked. "I don't hear anything else," Albert replied. "Maybe it was just some drunk Native Americans causing trouble. But what they were doing up here beyond the lodge puzzles me. They're blocking our way back to the woods so we can't move without being caught." Suddenly, another chorus of yells pierced the air. The Native Americans were getting closer to the lodge with every moment. "Dave!" the crow killer cried out. "I'm afraid we're in trouble. The Native Americans are getting closer and closer." "Can we fight our way out of this?" Dave asked, his desperation clear in his voice. "Ain't no chance for that," said the crow killer with a wise shake of his head. "If they catch us, we better not fight 'em. We'll just make 'em angry without doing any good. They outnumber us 100 to 1, and if we resist, they'll kill us instantly. But if we surrender, they'll keep us as prisoners until they're ready to torture us. Then we might have a chance to escape. Think about the little girl, Dave. If we die, what will happen to her?" The sound of hurried footsteps approached them, carried on the night air. "They're coming!" cried the crow killer. "I'm afraid it's all over for us. The savages are heading straight for our lodge." "Can't we cut a hole and escape through the back?" suggested Dave. "I was thinking the same, but the redskins seem to be all around us," replied the crow killer. "We might as well stay quiet for now. They might not even be after us. It might just be some drunken Indians." But their hope was short-lived. Suddenly, the Indian war whoop rang out, proving that the lodge was circled by crow warriors. Many footsteps approached the door, and the crow killer took a few steps back, folding his arms and awaiting the enemy's entrance. Dave was devastated. Everything he had done to save the girl he loved had led up to this moment, where they were thwarted by the redskins. He wished he had the strength of a giant to crush the yelling demons that surrounded him. But there was no escape, and resistance was futile. Fate had crushed him. For a few minutes, the scouts listened in silence, hearing the Indians move around the lodge. They had not attempted to enter yet. "If they found us, they're mighty afraid not to come after us," remarked Albert, listening to the sounds outside. "Pray to heaven," exclaimed Dave, "that they do not suspect we're here. Well, if these darn fools don't know we're here, then what in tarnation are they doing?" Another wave of yells pierced the air. Daisy clung tighter to her lover's chest. "Oh, they'll kill you," cried the poor girl, more concerned for Dave's safety than her own. "We must all die some day, Daisy," said Dave sadly, giving her a farewell kiss on her lips now pale with fear. The yells continued to echo as footsteps approached the door. "They're coming, all right," said the crow-killer calmly. Then the skin that served as a door was torn away, and the tall form of the white vulture stalked into the lodge, followed by the crow braves. As the hunter had suspected, the white vulture had managed to remove the gag from his mouth, and it was his war-whoop that had first alarmed the guides. The white vulture surveyed the scene in silence for a few moments. The guides stayed quiet. The crow-killer stood with folded arms, staring down his enemies, while Dave supported Daisy's frail body. "The crow-killer is a great warrior to dare to come into the lodges of his enemies," said the white vulture. "The Great Spirit has delivered him into the hands of the Crow Nation, and he shall die like a chief." At a nod from the white vulture, the braves began to bind Dave and the crow-killer, who didn't resist, knowing it would be futile. Daisy, almost fainting, was taken away from Dave's side, and then the two white men were moved to another lodge, deep within the village, where they were kept under heavy guard. Chapter 12, The Revelation. "Well, looks like trouble's coming," said the man known as the Crow-Killer, speaking in a calm and collected manner. "But if we're given enough time, we might be able to outsmart them yet," he continued. "But they won't give us the time we need. They're too afraid of us to wait before seeking their revenge," replied his companion. "You're right, Dave. They'll likely come for us soon enough. But I've been fighting the crows for the better part of 20 years now. I've spilled the blood of many a crow chief, and if they want to take my life in return, well, the odds are still in my favor," said the crow-killer, his voice steady and unwavering. Just as they finished speaking, the old chief known as Thundercloud, accompanied by two other warriors, entered the lodge. "Take the young brave to the lodge of Thundercloud," ordered the chief. The Indians helped Dave up from his skin couch and led him out of the lodge, through the village and towards Thundercloud's hut. As they approached, they were confronted by the white vulture, who looked on in surprise at the unusual procession. "Who has dared to take the pale face from the lodge where the white vulture placed him?" demanded the chief angrily. "The Thundercloud wishes to speak with the crow-killer alone. He has a secret to tell him that will make the great chief howl like a dog," one of the Indians replied. "It is well. Thundercloud is a great chief. Let my brothers go on," conceded the white vulture as he walked away. The Indians then led Dave into the lodge and left him alone with his thoughts, the weight of his situation heavy upon him. The white vulture prowled through the village, his steps slow and deliberate as he made his way to the hut where the infamous crow-killer was imprisoned. He paused outside the door, listening intently before slipping around to the back of the lodge, where he lay on the ground, his ear pressed to the hard earth. He strained to hear the conversation within. Once the Indians had departed with Dave, the thundercloud emerged from the shadows and cast a curious eye upon the great enemy of his people. The crow-killer lay immobile on a bed of bearskins, his expression stoic and unyielding. The hunter's features betrayed no emotion, even as the old chief broke the silence. "The crow-killer is a great chief," the old warrior said, speaking in the crow tongue. "What does the thundercloud want with the crow-killer?" Albert asked, his voice flat and devoid of inflection. "Many braves of the Crow Nation have been sent to the happy hunting grounds by the knife and the bullet of the crow-killer," the white vulture replied, his eyes burning with a fierce intensity. "The thundercloud speaks the truth," Albert acknowledged with a nod. "I've taken down enough crows to keep their tribe on short supply of braves." "The crow-killer is a great warrior," the white vulture continued, his voice low and measured. "He strikes like a snake, moving undetected into the heart of our lodges. He has bested our greatest chief, the white vulture, in single combat. The blood of the crow braves stains his hands, and their spirits cry out for vengeance. The chiefs of the crow tribe are listening, their ears attuned to the wails of their slain brothers. The crow-killer is a great chief, but he will perish before the sun rises over the big river." The chief spoke with honesty in his voice. The renowned warrior they called the Crow Killer had executed every order given to him by the chief. He was a formidable fighter, and the crows were nothing but cowardly dogs that yelped and ran away whenever they caught a glimpse of him. None of their chiefs dared engage the Crow Killer in single combat, for he had slain every warrior who dared stand against him. The Thundercloud had a brother, a brave warrior named Rolling Cloud. Sadly, his life was cut short by the sharp blade of the Crow Killer. The infamous warrior also robbed the crows of their beloved singing bird, and the bird, known as the Little Star, lived for many moons in the White Chief's lodge. The Crow Killer did not fear death. He was not a spineless cur who whimpered with fear. Even at the torture stake, he would face his captors with a mocking grin and laugh at the crows who quivered and fled at the sight of him. He spat upon their weak and cowardly ways. The Indian's rage reached boiling point as he listened to the mocking words of the Crow Killer, but eventually he found his voice and spoke out. "The Crow Killer boasts of his prowess," the Thundercloud said disdainfully, "but he is deaf to the words of wisdom. Before he ends up howling like a dog and begging for mercy, I shall make him listen to words that will break his spirit." The Thundercloud drew closer to the Crow Killer, and with a venomous glare he spoke again. "The Crow Killer stole my people's singing bird, the Little Star." And she did indeed sing in his lodge for many moons. But when the ice melted, the Little Star gave birth to 2 young braves, and they became a symbol of the long-awaited revenge that the crows had deep inside their hearts. And so, when the trees began to shed their leaves, the Thundercloud led our warriors to the Crow Killer's lodge by the big river, and we took back what was ours. We took his woman and his 2 braves. They journeyed to the Crow villages, but when the darkness enveloped them, they stopped by the bank of the vast river. Suddenly, the Blackfeet attacked the Crow camp, who fought fiercely like the white bears. However, the Blackfeet warriors were as numerous as blades of grass on the prairie, and they successfully seized the precious Little Star and the 2 papooses of the Crow Killer. But the blue-coated white braves soon arrived and scalped the Blackfeet warriors. The Blackfeet, retreating with the Little Star and the papooses, were subsequently ambushed by the Crow braves, who recaptured the Little Star and the young warriors, but one of the papooses was missing after the encounter. The old hunter gazed in amazement at the shocking revelation. Either the Blackfeet braves or the blue-coated whites had taken one papoose, but the crows had secured the Little Star and the other papoose, taking them to their lodges near the colossal mountains. Nevertheless, the Little Star refused to wed the Rolling Cloud, leading to her tragic demise at the hands of the Crow Nation. On the other hand, the young papoose, offspring of the Crow Killer and the Little Star, was raised by the crows to become one of their great warriors. He was now the great fighting man of the Crow Nation. The Crow Killer was shocked upon learning that the White Vulture was his son, who had handed him over to the crows that very night. Despite killing multiple young warriors of the Crow Nation, the Crow Killer would face his mortal end at the hands of the crows, finally realizing that his son had become a formidable chief of the Crow Nation, holding a deep hatred for the whites. The old chief observed the guide with a triumphant look, relishing the thoughts crossing the Crow Killer's mind, while the latter remained silent, gazing contemptuously at the Indian. "The words of the Thundercloud have silenced my brother. He must listen again," said the chief. "When the dawn breaks, the Thundercloud will return, and the Crow Chief's knife will drink the Crow Killer's blood. The chief has spoken. It is a good omen," he added, casting a final glance at the helpless guide before departing from the lodge. Moments later, the 2 guards seized Dave and returned him to the hut, while the Indians positioned themselves outside the door. The Crow Killer recounted the tale of the Thundercloud to Dave. The mystery surrounding the young guide's birth was finally solved, as it was revealed that he and the White Vulture were brothers. "Well, it's fate," Albert finally spoke up. "I don't protest it, although I admit I'd like to have the chance to tell those crows what I think of them before I go. It makes me proud, too, to know that my son is their great chief. Blood will show. My white blood made him who he is, the most formidable warrior in all of the Crow Nation. We don't have much time left, Dave spoke up. Our time is running out. The old chief will not dare to let us die in public now that we know the secret. He will likely dismiss the guards and quietly finish us off, Albert replied. We will leave the two guides to their musings and return to Daisy. Despair had taken hold of the poor girl, since she believed that her lover's life was her fault. If she had not met him, he would not be facing certain death now. Why did I ever meet him? Why should he have to pay for my actions with his life? She wailed in agony. A significant amount of time had passed since the Indians transferred the two guides from the lodge. Daisy was afraid every moment of hearing the noise that would indicate her lover's death. However, the Indian village was eerily silent. Suddenly, Daisy heard footsteps and approached the lodge. There was only one man. Suddenly, the tall form of the white vulture stood before the helpless girl. In horror, she gazed at the Indian. By the dim light of the flickering fire, she could discern his features devoid of any paint. The young maid noticed for the first time the striking resemblance between the Indian chief and her lover. "Why does the singing bird weep?" asked the white vulture in soft, plain English, with a very slight Indian accent. "Because I am unhappy," truthfully answered the maiden. "Why? No harm shall come to the white squaw." Daisy shook her head sorrowfully, as if in doubt. "The wigwam of the white vulture is empty. Will not the white bird come and sing in the lodge of the Crow chief?" "What, I?" For the first time Daisy guessed the fate that was intended for her, and her heart sank within her at the very thought. "Yes, you. The white vulture is a great chief of the Crow Nation. He loves the singing bird of the whites. He would take her to his wigwam. She shall not work like the red squaws. She shall be the singing bird of the greatest chief in the Crow Nation. Will the white squaw come?" "No, no, I cannot," cried Daisy, looking pleadingly into the face of the white vulture. "The singing bird loves another?" asked the white vulture in his calm, clear tones. "Yes," replied Daisy. "Is the singing bird sure that she loves another?" continued the chief. "Yes, I am sure," said Daisy wonderingly. "The white squaw loves the young guide who looks like the red chief and is a prisoner in the village of the crows." "Yes," answered Daisy, mournfully but firmly. "It's a good thing," said the chief, looking at Daisy intently. "But does the white hunter love the singing bird?" "He loves her more than anything in the world," replied Daisy, her voice choking with emotion. "Does the white squaw know that the young hunter will be killed by the crows before the sun rises over the big river?" asked the chief, his face stern and unyielding. Daisy felt like her heart had stopped beating. She buried her face in her hands and began to cry. Her lover was going to die, and there was nothing she could do about it. "The singing bird says she loves the white hunter," continued the chief. "If she loves him, will she save him from death?" Daisy looked up, her eyes red and swollen from crying. "Save him? How can I save him?" "The white hunter's life belongs to the white vulture," said the chief. "If the white vulture says go free, no warrior in the Crow Nation will dare say no. If the singing bird will promise to come and sing in the lodge of the white vulture, the white hunter shall return to his people." Daisy knew what she had to do. She could save her lover's life by sacrificing her own. It was the only way. "Set him free, and I promise to do whatever you want," she said, her voice strong and unwavering. "The singing bird is wise," said the white vulture, his face devoid of any emotion. "Let the singing bird follow me." Daisy followed the white vulture out of the Indian lodge. She knew that this was the beginning of the end for her, but she didn't care. She had saved the man she loved, and that was all that mattered. The chief strode ahead, leading the way through the village. Though it appeared empty, all the brave warriors, aside from the two keeping watch over the white prisoners, were gathered for an important council at the end of the village. As he passed the lodges, the chief made his way towards a small thicket, where the crow killer and Dave had managed to capture him just a few hours prior. "The singing bird will wait for the chief's return without fail?" inquired the white vulture. "Yes," came Daisy's resigned reply, her suffering having left her passive. "Good," replied the chief. With that, the white vulture left Daisy's side and made his way back through the village to the lodge, where the two guides were being kept captive. The two braves standing guard at the entrance respectfully withdrew as the chief entered the hut. By the dim firelight, the two hunters could just make out the identity of their visitor. There was a meaningful exchange of glances between the elder and younger hunters, father and son, and the young brothers. Silently and without a word, the white vulture drew his scalp knife, cut through the skins forming the back of the lodge, and beckoned the hunters to follow. Though their hands were bound, they followed in wonder. The chief led them carefully behind the lodges and out to a small thicket on the outskirts of the village. There he stopped and brought Daisy forth, who cried out in joy and threw herself into her lover's astonished arms. The singing bird saved the white hunter's life by agreeing to sing in the lodge of the white vulture, declared their rescuer. "I will not accept life on such conditions," cried Dave. The crow killer looked at the white vulture with confusion, but without hesitation, the Indian chief removed the thongs binding their arms. "The white vulture is a great fighter of the Crow Nation." He heard Thundercloud's words, his ears were open. "Father, brother," he said, clasping their hands. "Little Star looks down from the happy hunting grounds upon her son. See?" He led them to 3 horses and commanded, "Mount and ride for the big fort. The white vulture will die a crow, but he will never shed the blood of whites again. Will my father, brother, think of the chief sometimes? Will the singing bird, when she sings in the happy wigwam of my brother, think of the white vulture who is desolate and alone? Away! Ride fast, for the crow braves must not know that I have saved my father, my brother, and the singing bird." They rode away as fast as they could, taking the hiding place of the crow killer's roan mare and Dave's horse on their way. The white vulture watched them until they disappeared in the distance. Then he retraced his steps through the village, entered the lodge through the slit he had cut in the rear and left the door, passing the braves who were still watching. When Thundercloud entered the lodge to execute his vengeance on the hunters, he found nothing but emptiness. A terrible commotion followed, and a hot chase began, but it was futile. The crows believe to this day that the crow killer received help from some evil power in his miraculous escape. Albert, Dave, and Daisy reached Fort Benton safely, and then travelled to Spur City, where they made young Patrick Allen disgorge the property he had taken possession of as his father's heir. Daisy and Dave had finally tied the knot, and true love had found its way. As for the crow killer, he still continued to lead the way for those who sought his guidance. However, his battle with the Crow Nation had come to a close, and he no longer engaged in fights with the Indians unless it was in self-defense. But what of the white vulture? Well, he had risen to the position of chief of the entire Crow Nation and had gained legendary status as the most formidable warrior in the Northwest. All of the neighboring tribes trembled at the mere mention of his name. His final moments were befitting of a great chief. During a raid into the Blackfoot country, a bloody battle ensued, and as always the white vulture seemed to have a charmed life. The crows were on the verge of victory, and the Blackfeet were retreating in a scattered mess through the woods, when suddenly the white vulture fell from his horse. Investigation revealed that a bullet had been shot from his own nation, most likely a relative of the Black Dog chief, whom the white vulture had killed on the Yellowstone River. Grieving deeply, the crows brought the body of their beloved leader back home. And so the story of these legendary warriors comes to an end, the end. This concludes Love in Yellowstone, written by Carla Jean Moss, narrated by Myrtle Nance. Visit brooksaudiobooks.com for updates on the availability of new books and a special free offer.